HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambi. With Bambi, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambi's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambi starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambi can take off your plate. Go to Bambi.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambi.com. Type in Accelerate.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business, whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing. Guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for this special edition of Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast. Once again, I have gotten a hold of a couple more experts on how to navigate this whole COVID-19 situation that we are finding ourselves in. And I am thrilled to be joined today by Greg Shepard and Randall LaVeau. And they're going to be talking with us about really crisis management and what we can do as business owners to navigate all of this in a way that helps us get through this crazy time that we are in. So, and I am going to actually ask them to introduce themselves. Greg, I'm going to ask you to go first, and then Randall, please.
Sure. So my name is Greg Shepard, and I am a serial entrepreneur. I've done 12 startups and exited 15 companies over $1 billion, and haven't lost any money on a deal yet. Also the founder of Boss Capital Partners, a syndicate. I have a book coming out later this year, published by Forbes. And I write for most of the magazines and speak and that sort of thing.
Great. Thank you. Randall, you're up.
Yep. So I have over 15 years experience leading sales and marketing organizations. My specialty is on the growth side, sales, marketing, and service delivery support. I have 5 years standing up a marketing practice within a consulting firm called Sales Benchmark Index, where I worked exclusively with private equity companies and their investments and portfolios focusing on turnaround and change management, helping a lot of those portfolios ultimately achieve their end goal, which was exit or acquisition.
Got it. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys joining me to have this conversation and really provide some valuable information for the listeners. So we're talking about crisis management, and we are definitely in what I think we would all consider to be a crisis. And Greg and Randall, this BOSS system that you guys have created is really suited for helping people navigate this kind of thing. So I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to share how you think people can be getting through the next however long we have in this environment.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I would definitely say that this is a crisis, maybe a category 2 crisis. So Boss Capital Partners is a investment syndicate that focuses on Series Seed SaaS companies. The check sizes are between 100,000 and 5 million, and we look for a very specific type of company. And we use this strategy called BOSS, and the BOSS stands for the Business Operating Support System. And BOSS is something that I've developed in collaboration with a lot of people over the last 25 years, trying to figure out a way to make it so that more entrepreneurs are successful. There's a huge problem in my view of entrepreneurs failing. And now we're in this crisis, which is going to make that even worse. So what I wanted to do was try to provide, entrepreneurs with some tools and some framework that they can use to try to figure out how to, instead of digging further into the hole or trying to dig out of the hole, just build a ladder to allow them to get out of the hole, get back on the surface, and get their business back in the jam. Nice. So the North Star in BOSS, there's 5 steps. There's the North Star, which aligns your company to the end goal. There's the strategy, which is the roadmap or the plan. There's execution, which is actually doing the plan. Standardization, which is leaving a breadcrumb trail behind you so that you know exactly how you got there and can learn from it. Sort of like if you look at education, there are textbooks document the past, the history, and have some fourth, some look into the future, And then Kaizen, which is just continuous improvement. And so when we look at this crisis, you look at the idea of a 5-step process. And so the idea of this is to go from being in a crisis to going back to where you have control of your business and you're taking advantage of the situation. A lot of times these situations prevent huge opportunities, but people are focused so much on the negative that they can't figure out how to take advantage of the opportunity because they can't even see it.
Yeah.
So when you look at this 5-stage process, you look at first the call to action. What says that you're in crisis? Well, we've identified a crisis right now. The next thing that you do is you meet a mentor, and that's me helping you right now. Somebody that has the advice to walk you through the following 3 stages. So the third stage in this is to cross the threshold. So act on the advice. So this is like the execution, right? So get the advice, act on the advice. And the 4th stage is to get the reward. This is where you emerge from the crisis as a better company. And then you return back to ordinary. So the world has changed. Things are never going to be the same again. But now, you're a better company and you're built when this happens again. If it happens again, you're still in a good place. My background in the last 25 years, I survived the dot bomb, which ages me, but some of us remember the dot bomb really bad. If you were in the advertising space or the .com space, that was a huge tech bubble that burst, and it was like this. It was just like everything just stopped. You woke up in the morning, everything was gone. It was horrible. Then you have the 9/11 crisis, and you have the 2008 recession, and all of these things were the kind of things that shut down a lot of businesses. And so I have experience dealing with this. And this program allows me to be the mentor on step 2 of the 5 steps that I just gave you. So call to action, meet the mentor, crossing the threshold, getting the advice and acting on it. The reward, emerging from the crisis as a better company. The return, now you're back to business as usual, but you're a better and more improved company. And I'm going to ask Randall to go from here.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of psychology behind entering into a crisis. And especially with this particular crisis being a pandemic, it's essentially unprecedented, right? Most of us are sitting back there saying this has never happened before. The social distancing, work from home, not able to go into an office. And that's true, right? This is an unprecedented pandemic. But when you look at it in relation to what Greg was saying about his experience moving through other crises, it's important to remain calm in these and follow a process, right? And so the benefit of us having experienced and lived a lot of these crises is we've come out with a standardized process, right? And a way to dimension the crisis and then a way to set up your tasks and initiatives to make sure, like Greg said, you return, transformed. And when you return to status quo, you have a total new understanding of how to approach your business and situations. So pre-crisis, right, in most minds of an entrepreneur and people in business, we have a circle of concern, right? These are all the factors that exist in and around our business, our industry, our environment, right? A lot of these concerns we have no control of, right? So prior to a crisis, within that circle of concern, we have a pretty large circle of influence, the things we can control, right? Or at least attempt to control. Now, when the crisis happens, right, and we recognize the crisis, that circle of influence, which was pretty large prior to the crisis, starts to contract and pretty drastically. So if you could picture this with me, your circle of concern still stays the same size, but in a crisis, your circle of influence contracts drastically. And there's a few things that you should be focused on during a crisis, right? So now the benefit, again, of having us gone through this is we've actually created a list of things we can control and things we can't control. And so Greg and I, whether we're working on our businesses or portfolios or advising others, we tend to pass this list, right, which is kind of the answers to the test. Here, as an entrepreneur, as a startup, these are the things that you should be focused on in order to turn your business around and emerge from this crisis as a transformed business. And so we actually have, a resource toolkit that provides all of this information. The checklist is quite extensive, but at the same time, I think we can go through a couple examples here and, to try to paint a picture for the audience and how to dimension some of these areas of concern or things we can control during a crisis.
That would be great.
Yeah. So really, it's important to understand how to come to this list, right? So this is where we leverage the BOSS process. And we actually have an initiative development process, which is 5 steps. And again, this is a resource that we're providing to your audience and is available on our landing page. We'll make sure this is available to everyone. But the first step in the process is to isolate the initiative, right? So looking at your circle of influence and the things you can control, isolate the main initiative that you want to focus on. Now, as you progress through that initiative, the first step is to complete a SWOT analysis. And a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? People have heard of this before. Yeah. But the reason it's important to use this now and early on is because you're redimensioning the initiative, right? Sure. The thing that you want to focus on has to be seen through a new light as market conditions changed, which is going to lead to buyer behaviors changing. right? A whole bunch of factors come in, and this is a new world that we're living in.
Right.
So after you complete the SWOT analysis, you're then able to determine missions and objectives, right? Mission is holistically what you aim to accomplish. The objectives are the tasks that feed into that mission, right? The things that need to be done in order for you to get that mission completed. And then we work through a process called prioritizing, which is using urgent versus important and impact versus effort, right? And the reason that we go through such an extensive process like this for each of the initiatives is because entrepreneurs right now can't afford to waste resources, which is people, money, and time, right? Those are likely the most important things within your business right now. So contracting your circle of control, making sure it's over the specific areas that you can actually influence, and then having a process and a step or a multi-step process in order to make sure that you're properly allocating resources, which is people, money, and time, right?
I see. I love this for so many reasons. I think my biggest reason is because it is so, what is the word I'm looking for? It is specific. That's not the word I'm looking for, but you know.
Yeah, it has specific steps that somebody.
Yeah.
That's what it's a framework, right?
Yeah.
So sort of like, the simple thing is that you can go through and you can just follow this framework, and it's a guide. It's like having a guide. It's like if you were going to go through a jungle and the guide is like, look, go this way, watch out for that, watch out for this. And they've made a path for you.
Right.
A lot easier for entrepreneurs. And that's the whole idea of Boss, was to give people the path that I've already blazed. I was the tip of the spear through this whole process, and you take quite a beating as an entrepreneur. And I was like, there's no reason everybody should have to go through this.
Right.
Be able to just give somebody a guide that is nimble and agile enough that it can change with the times, and open source enough that it's free and that people can be helped by doing it and add in their own advice, which is how Boss is developed.
Yeah, which is so great because experience is such an important part of this. And I think it gives people that feeling where right now we're feeling so much uncertainty and lack of control. It gives people something they can do that feels solid, that they're not grasping at like limbs as they're falling out of a tree.
Yeah,
right?
I'm getting hit by them.
Yeah, right, on the way down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
As business professionals, there's a lot of art to what we do, right? And a lot of creative ingenuity that goes into the entrepreneurial process. But it's in these times of crisis that we return to standardization, right?
Yeah.
There's no time, to waste, right? Time and people, processes all matter. They're paramount in this. So returning to a standard that you could follow, and we've tried and tested this because, crises can be very large like this, right? Pandemic, global pandemic, everyone's practicing social distancing. But you could also have a crisis within your company. You could have a crisis within your industry, right? And so it's important to always return back to these standardizations of steps, making sure that you are crossing every T and dotting every I moving through the process.
Right.
When I was talking about some of the experience I had, the dot bomb affected tech companies that were in the ad space, right? So this was, when I was in that space, that was a crisis. Whereas the 2008 recession was more of a real estate lending crisis that then turned into a recession.
Right.
So there are, and this is the same scenario, right? I mean, it's been 12 years since we've had a correction, market correction. It was due anyway. The oil situation with Saudi and Russia, and then the coronavirus kind of tipped it off and made it happen. And so now you have to see these things as opportunities, right? So you have to sit down and say, okay, when this happens, there are really big opportunities out there. How do I get my mind focused on those? And instead of being so distracted with everything that is negative.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I was in a meeting this morning, a Zoom meeting this morning, and we were just all sort of doing a temperature check kind of thing. And one of the things I said to everybody was, when you're anxious and fearful, it's because you're in the future. But when you're doing something, you're in the present. So taking action and doing something can keep you from being stressed and anxious. So, embracing something like this, where, it's a toolkit, there's the step process and strategy and structure to it, gives business owners an opportunity to get out of the future, get into the present, and actually, it sounds to me like create, like adapt their business so that moving forward, it is more, the picture I have in my head is that it has steel around it, that it is more durable is the word.
Yeah, it's like bumper car. You go bowling with your
Yeah.
kids, put up the rails, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you can't make a gutter ball. You may still make a bad shot, but at least you're gonna stay in the lane. And I'm not
Exactly.
even happened to do that with my kids a few months ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the idea, right? Is to, and you're right. If you focus, whatever you focus on is what you're going to get. They say, when you're riding a bike, you look a direction, you go that direction.
Right.
Driving, you look a direction, you go that direction. So
Yeah.
what we're saying here is let's look in the right direction, and let's stop, take a breath, and reanalyze and reset the table. So the next stage of this is a circle of influence checklist. I wanted to also say that a lot of the stuff that we're talking about on the podcast here are things that we made available on a website. And there are tools, there's a deck in there, there's stuff that can be helpful to you and your listeners.
Okay.
So I know it's difficult to do this while you're just listening because you don't have visual tools, but those we're making available to you. Randall, do you want to go through the checklist and then we can hit on the development process?
Yeah, so there's a lot on the checklist, and like Greg said, this is free, to the listeners here. It's available on the landing page, so we'll make that available to everyone. I encourage you to download it along with some of the other resources and tools. We have templates in there that could help you dimension these processes and work through them. So really a great place to get resources for this crisis management. But if I'm looking at the circle of influence versus the circle of concern, right? Circle of influence being factors we can control, and circle of concern being factors we can't control. It's really about elimination, right? And just like in sales, I come from a sales background. It's just as important to qualify out as it is to qualify in. So while your attention is drawn towards the things that you should be focused on and can control, it's also important to make sure you work through that list of things you can't control and stack hands as a team or as a company, that we're going to put these things aside for right now and shift all resources to focus on what's most urgent and what's most important within our company. Right. So a couple examples of these would be, if we're looking at the product side, right, the priority of the backlog, that's something that we can control. And that's something that should be forefront and center for everyone going through a crisis versus how long a feature will take to build, right? So when you dimension those, right, the circle of influence, the things we can control is the priority of the backlog. The things that we can't control right now is how long features will take to build. We have to use this elimination process in order to move through this list. Now on the sales side, right, something that would be in your circle of concern would be the customer acquisition costs, right? And typically in a crisis like this, especially in the one that we're dealing with right now, where we have employees who used to be in the field now working from home, we can't go into offices anymore, right? It's making it very difficult for companies to look at their customer acquisition costs, right? But this is something that's important to dimension very early and driving down your customer acquisition costs as early as possible, because as the crisis continues, you see a withering, right, of your efforts in trying to prevent that increase, right? Now, in your circle of concern, something that you can't control in parallel to CAC or customer acquisition costs would be the lifetime value, right? Right now, we don't have the luxury, and most sales organizations don't have the luxury to be looking at the lifetime value of a contract, because right now revenue is paramount, right? Getting as much into your customer base as possible. So when you come out of this, right, you still have customers, versus in a typical scenario, we would tend to push out lifetime value and maybe not have a deal go through because it doesn't meet our standards for lifetime value. So those are our two examples, and there are many more here. As I'm looking at the list, we have about 25 different things that you should be focused on in your area of concern and things you can control right now, and about the same amount in the factors you can't control.
Got it.
So when you get your company back to the stage where it's sort of now, okay, you've got control of things, right? You can take a breath, your pulse is lower, you have some action items and something you can actually work off of. You sit back and you say, now that I've isolated the initiative, right? I know what I'm going to do. Then you go and you do a SWOT. So a SWOT just stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's like 4 squares. With quadrants, each one of them sort of allow you to go with your action plan and do a SWOT that says, okay, what are my strengths? And then you do 3 to 5. What are my weaknesses? 3 to 5. What are the opportunities I have? And then what are the threats? So this is like tailwinds and headwinds, right? And now that you have that, you can go in, you can say, okay, what are my missions? What are the top level missions? And, we've talked about this before. There's 4 functional areas in these types of businesses. So sales and marketing, service delivery, product and tech, and then shared services. And so now you say, okay, in this model that you have and these action items you need to do, put a mission together for all 4 of those. Each one of them gets one mission. It's from X to Y by a certain date. Then you boil that down and you now have the ability to create prioritization. So that mission creates the delegation and the prioritization is the next step. And that is just urgent over important and impact versus effort. So things that are urgent happen when things that are important aren't there. So you start out as, okay, what of these things are urgent and what of these things are important? Which one of these things are going to prevent more urgent things from happening? And you go on the important things first. Then you say, okay, let's look at what has the highest impact with the lowest effort. Now what you have is you have the incident initiation plan. So you have your sort of high level plan of what you're going to do, that list that Randall just went over. You've done a SWOT to figure out what headwinds and tailwinds you have. And then you developed your missions per functional area with those objectives, and you prioritize them. And now you can move into execution. There's a good case study that we can go over that sort of outlines this. Randall, do you want to hit that?
Sure. So this is a company that we worked with very recently, and actually they implemented this process and had already started to see results. So the company's in the high tech space, about 10 employees, and they're selling an automation service, just to kind of set the stage or give you context. The situation, obviously, that we're dealing with right now is social distancing has caused the workforce to abandon the field, and the customer acquisition costs have skyrocketed as a result of that. So what they did is they leveraged the initiative development process that Greg just went through, along with the circle of concern checklist, and started to work through some of the issues, right? What they did as a result, right, the process led them to 2 main points of focus, right, 2 objectives. One was deal triage. So rather than focusing on pulling in net new leads and building pipeline, they needed to focus on the existing pipeline they had and try to close those deals as quickly as possible, even trying to pull some deals that were forecasted for the future to now, right? Because of the uncertainty of the market, we don't know what's going to happen, and we were fearful of future pipeline falling out as a result of these economic conditions. And then the second was because the field is no longer relevant, right? Field sales, field marketing, their field event budget was repurposed over to digital marketing, and then some set aside for other initiatives, right? Which it's always good to have cash on hand in a situation like this. So as a result of them going through this process, determining that their two objectives were going to be deal triage, right? Close as many deals in the pipeline as possible, even bringing some forward, and then repurposing budget that's no longer relevant to things that are going to help you decrease your customer acquisition costs. They were able to drop their customer acquisition costs by 20% within a week, right? Just repurposing people and money into the right areas. And then the deal triage approach that they undertook as a result of this process allowed them to pull in 4 deals that were forecasted for future months, right? So getting those deals in now before we while we understand what's happening and while people can still purchase our solution was very important. And so having those 4 extra deals come in early, right, provides a little bit more runway for them to be able to work through additional areas in the crisis management process.
I really appreciate that example. And I love this circle of concern, circle of influence. It just is a great way of describing it. This makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, I mean, for me anyway, whenever I find myself really, stressed, and a lot of anxiety, it's usually because I don't have a plan.
Yeah.
It's I don't know what to do. I don't have the information. And so, with BOSS, the whole idea of BOSS is to make sure that you have a plan, and at least you're directionally correct in a situation like a crisis, Yeah. This framework, was brought through 25 years of studying, all the different operating systems that are out there, from Six Sigma to Lean to Agile and so on and so forth. I mean, there's so many of them. And then also the military, right? So we had some recent revisions to this process by a retired captain of the Navy and also executive director of the local university, who gave us some really good insights into this from a perspective of triage and crisis management. And this guy was responsible for an entire fleet of ships, right? We were talking about, things carrying nuclear weapons. So, he was able to sort of, sit with us, and we went over BOSS, and, I did this with the Navy SEALs and the first fighting wing of the Air Force. And, these people deal with crisis that we can't even fathom. So, this process it will work for you. It will work. You just have to follow the steps, and it'll guide you through. I mean, obviously the steps are blank. You have to fill them in. You have to think for yourself, but it'll certainly get you away from that level of anxiety that you have, and at least moving in a direction of being more solution oriented.
Exactly.
We have, again, these tools available to people, and there is a chart that, I'm going to try to verbally explain it, but on the top of the sheet, it has 4 quadrants, and that's for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And below that is a sort of a spreadsheet, and you see one column with the functional area, description of the functional area, the due date, and the percentage to goal. And this is how you track where you are. So are you 10% to goal, 25% to goal, whatever you are there. And then you have the 3 to 5 objectives for that overall, the due date on each one of those, and the percentage to goal. And then you have the KRs, the key results on that. And each one of those, and the framework is always the same. It's always from X to Y by a certain date, time constrained. And the integers are, from X means dollar amount, percentage, or number, to Y means the same, right? Dollar amount, percentage, or number. And then you have a framework now, and you put this together, and then you start executing. And this is where you're sort of moved out of crisis management, and you're back into the BOSS framework, where you're now able to start getting things done and moving your way out of this situation.
Yeah, which is really, I mean, that's that is really the key, that there are actionable steps you can take that move you forward and move your business forward, instead of being in that sort of paralyzed, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before, don't know what to do. If you can, sort of give yourself over to, well, let me just walk through a process that's been proven, then people don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to do this as if they're the only company out there going through this, because there's processes that have worked for other situations.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that when 2008 happened, I remember very clearly, actually. I remember getting up in the morning and driving to the office, getting to the office before everybody, sitting down, turning on my machine, and having like 150 clients cancel. Just, 70% of my income or something. I can't even remember what it was, but it was just like this, just cancel. Just all my emails were just clients canceling. And I remember this, that feeling you get in your heart and your stomach, that like nauseous feeling, and you're just like frozen.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there going, just short of breath, like, what am I going to do? Oh my, and then I had to sort of take 4 deep, I learned from the Navy SEALs, you take 4 breaths in at a count of 4 and 4 breaths out at a count of 4, get a hold of myself, and then sit down and say, okay, let's put together a plan, put together a plan to make this happen. And so this is a really, really good set of tools that will really, really help these entrepreneurs get past, this massive level of anxiety, which is just not healthy for anybody,
right.
alone, the family, the economy, everything, right? It's just not healthy. It's not productive. And get to a stage of like, okay, let's get productive, let's get focused, and let's get executing on something to dig our way out of this situation, to get our way out of this hole that we're now in, that we've fell into. The website that we put together is Gregory, Gregory, Shepard, SHEPARD.com /COVID-19. This is the page that we put together specifically for this.
Great.
And people will be able to go to this page, and we are going to be doing a bunch of live webcasts with the universities and economic development councils to sort of help people through this process. And that might be good for your listeners to know too.
Yeah, no kidding. And is there like an email sign up available there so that they can be getting updates on things like that?
Yeah, they sign up for the email, and they'll get updates on when the next webcast is. If they miss it, they'll get emails on tools, so they can start using them.
Yeah.
We're trying to do our best to help entrepreneurs get through this tough time.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And I am so grateful to the two of you for coming on and explaining this. I think this is going to be one of those things that helps bring down the stress level, give people things that they can actually do in their business, which is so incredibly valuable right now. So thank you both for joining me and having this conversation. I think it is so valuable. It'll be out on the show page soon. I'm going to work on that to get it out there. And thanks for the landing page. I will make sure that that's in the show notes, GregoryShepard.com /COVID-19. I'll make sure that's in the show notes, and we will all carry on, and we will get through this. And folks, take those deep breaths that Greg was talking about. Do yourself a favor and lower your temperature and open up your brain and get to the business of working on your business, and continue to prosper and be curious as much as you can in this time. And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
Amazon is offering sign-on bonuses up to $1,000, plus get up to $20 an hour for select roles. The best part? We're hiring near you. So start now to take home something greater. New, higher wages with a sign-on bonus, a range of real benefits, and career growth opportunities in a top-rated workplace. So earn more and see how great pay and sign-on bonuses can lead to a greater life for you. Go to amazon.com/apply. Amazon is an equal opportunity employer.
Full send with the driver? Check. Piercing iron through the wind? Check. Low checker, high spinner, flop to a tight pin? Check, check, and check. No matter what shot you need to pull off, there's one ball that's better for them all. The all-new TP5 and 5X from TaylorMade. With a newly redesigned dimple pattern, engineered for more distance, more control around the green, and better stability in the wind, it's the hottest tour ball in golf. So no matter what shot you face, there's one ball that's better for all. The TP5 and 5X from TaylorMade.
Do you love news about LinkedIn, Indeed, Google, and just about every other recruitment tech company out there?
Hell yeah. I'm Chad.
I'm Cheese.
We're the Chad and Cheese Podcast.
All the latest recruiting news and insights are on our show.
Dripping in snark and attitude.
Subscribe today wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We out.